Hello, and thank you for joining LASA OMS for our webinar, The Do's and Don'ts of Pediatric Acupuncture, featuring Robin Ray Green. My name is Jeff Bloom, Education Marketing Coordinator here at LASA OMS. LASA OMS strives to support our customers, practitioners, educators, and other industry professionals through quality products, product education, and school and humanitarian relief donations. With our free webinar series, we intend to offer product and practice management education through its practical application by some of our industry's most renowned educators. Please keep in mind, if you are not able to join us for future programs, we record each webinar and we make the video available on our blog, which is blog.lasaoms.com, in the following week or two. Let me take a moment to acclimate you to the webinar room. To the right of the video screen, you will see 3 tabs: Chat, Questions, and Polls. To ask a question of our guest speaker, please post it to the Questions tab. If you'd like to chat with the other attendees during the webinar, please use the Chat tab. We've also posted a poll tonight, and we'd appreciate your answer to the question. We will also attempt to answer every question during the course of the webinar tonight, but in the event we cannot, answers will be shared on our blog afterwards. Now for the main event. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest educator, Robin Ray Green. Robin is one of the leading pediatric acupuncture experts in the field. She is the founder of the Center for Acupuncture Pediatrics, which provides premier online pediatric training. She has taught thousands of acupuncturists in both her live and online trainings. She is a published Hay House author, and her book, Heal Your Child from the Inside Out, has helped thousands of parents around the world. It was during the process of healing her own son's eczema that she was called to work with kids. She loves her family practice in Morgan Hill, California, where she never has a dull day. Please join me in welcoming Robin.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for the introduction, and I am absolutely delighted to be here to talk about my favorite subject, which is pediatrics, and I am delighted to teach you guys some of the do's and don'ts for working with kids. So in this webinar, you're going to learn the tips, tools, and training needed for treating kids, and by the end of our time together, you'll know the do's and don'ts for a successful pediatric visit. And I want to encourage everyone to stay with me until the end, because I am going to give you an opportunity to take my free pediatric acupuncture course, and I will give you all the details at the very end of the webinar. And I just want to also take this moment to remind everyone to turn off all your distractions so that we can make the most of our time together. So just go ahead and flip off that Facebook and silence your phone, and this will be a really interesting hour together. So most people, when they think of pediatric acupuncture, they think it's like this. They think it is children crying. They think it's a horrible thing. This is usually most, parents. And reality, though, is that acupuncture is more like this. It's really pretty easy. It's fun. Kids really enjoy their treatments. But the thing is, most of us got little training and little instruction. So when we think about pediatric acupuncture, we might feel a little bit nervous about the idea of treating someone else's kid, or even treating your own child. Like, what happens if they don't like the needles, or what if they don't want to get on the table? It can make you feel a little bit nervous. And you might feel unsure and not know exactly how to proceed with the child. How many points do you do? What if you're not going to do acupuncture? What other things can you do in the treatment? And how do you treat a child with asthma versus an adult, or a child's digestive problems versus an adult? So those are some of the things that show up, as well as the thought of treating kids might just be totally outside your comfort zone. It's not something that you ever thought you were going to want to treat, but now maybe you're considering bringing children into your practice, but it's just really outside what you ever thought you were going to do. And the reason I think most people feel this way is because most of us lack instruction. We didn't get a lot of training while we were in school, and therefore we have very little experience, and then that translates into a lack of confidence. And in order for this to shift, really we need the right training, we need some experience, and with that experience, it builds our confidence, and then we start doing it more and we feel more competent, and as we feel more competent, then that again increases our confidence. So really, with the right training and guidance, you absolutely can confidently and easily treat kids and great results. But you might be thinking, why kids? Aren't kids pretty healthy? What do they need acupuncture for? And the reality is there are millions of children in the unwellness gap for whom Western medicine offers little beyond symptom management. And before I had kids, I really had no idea how many children were struggling with things from constipation, anxiety, eczema, colic, many things that we would typically think of as having, yet at a younger and younger age, these conditions are happening. And when I wrote the book, actually as I was talking to parents, I started to talk about this idea of the unwellness gap. And the unwellness gap is the idea that on the one side, you have children that are totally healthy. They're running, they're playing, they're outside, they sleep well, they digest well, their moods and behaviors are normal, and they're totally healthy, there's nothing wrong. And then you have kids that are like really sick. They're in the hospital for some reason. Maybe they have severe asthma or pediatric cancer or something where they're sick and it's a medical condition, and the doctor is going to take care of them. And then there's this whole group in the middle of kids with what we now refer to as chronic contemporary childhood conditions, where it's a modern phenomenon, things that we rarely saw 40 to 50 years ago. Things like atopic illness, asthma, allergies, eczema, functional abdominal pain, where the doctors are scoping these kids and they can't find anything wrong. Behavioral issues, hyperactivity, ADHD, defiance, like there's a whole defiance disorder, oppositional defiance disorder. There's so many teens these days with anxiety and depression. And so they're in this unwellness gap because when you're in the unwellness gap, there's not much Western medicine can do. There's no pill that can cure them. The most that they can hope for is symptom management, and that, cross your fingers, the child is going to outgrow it. And surprisingly, the rates of pediatric chronic illness have more than doubled since 1988. So this graph is showing the rates from 1988 to 1994, and then the rates were measured again in 2000 to 2006. And Jeff, can you hear me? I just want to make sure that I am hearing everybody hear me okay.
I hear you fine.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure.
And Caroline, maybe try refreshing the browser. That help. All right, I'm going to jump off again.
Okay. So what this has led to is, in the US, 1 in 3 children have ADHD, allergies, asthma, or autism. That's just the A's. We haven't even gotten through the whole alphabet. So we're looking literally at like 25 million children here that have some sort of serious chronic illness that is impacting their life, and they're not able to have a normal, happy, healthy childhood where they can run and play and swim and just be a kid. In fact, when it comes to asthma, the rates of pediatric asthma have increased 75% since 1980, and they finally have like plateaued, but at 3 to 4 times what they were before. And for a lot of these kids with asthma, there is just, if Western medicine is not working, there's not a lot that can be done for these kids, and it's very scary for the parents. It's traumatic, really, for everyone. And there are a lot of kids that fall into that unwellness gap with asthma. And so as a result of that, millions of parents are recognizing the inadequacy of medical treatment. They realize the doctor's great if it's something like a broken bone or there's a clear bacterial infection and antibiotics are warranted. But for many of these chronic contemporary health conditions, it's just not enough. And many parents are reluctant to give medications, especially because many of the medications that we're seeing kids on, we don't really have any long-term studies, so we don't know how these medications will affect children from a long-term standpoint. And so as a result, they're searching for natural options. And the reality is that there are many good options, and Chinese medicine is the solution. Chinese medicine is so great for many of these chronic health conditions in kids because we're not limited by a diagnosis. We are not limited by that sort of linear thinking, because many of these problems that kids have, there's not identifiable cause. Why did one child get eczema versus another? Why did one child have abdominal pain that nobody can understand where it's coming from, and all the test results and all of the scopes are coming back normal? And so Chinese medicine and acupuncture is a great alternative for all of these kids who are in the wellness gap. And I say to the practitioners that I mentor, if not us, then who? Because a lot of these parents are just searching the internet late at night trying to figure out what to do for their child's problem. And it's up to us to start educating them and letting them know that we have the solutions. So I wanted to take a look at the poll real quick and just see how much experience you guys have. So we've got about, the number one is occasionally. So we've got occasionally people are seeing kids. Then we've got the second is people are not seeing kids at all. Just a very few people are seeing kids somewhat often, and a couple people are seeing kids very often. So it's interesting. So most of you have a little bit to some to no experience treating kids. So that's really interesting. It's actually shifting right now. So we've just gone up, 57% of people see kids occasionally. That's really, really cool. And for those of you seeing kids occasionally, like, wouldn't it be amazing if you saw kids all the time? And for those of you who aren't really seeing them very often, what would that look like for your practice if suddenly you could see kids? And what's really cool about treating kids is that you don't have to dramatically change your practice to see kids. You can literally just focus on one or two issues, and that could bring more kids into your practice. And if you have openings in your practice, if you have openings that you want to fill, pediatrics is a great way. It's the only, I always say this, it's the only specialty that actually generalizes your practice, which is, I think, really super cool. So let's talk about the pediatric do's and don'ts. I break them down into the 5 pillars of success. So we're going to start with pillar number 1, which is do build rapport and trust. That is our number 1 goal when we're working with kids. When I first started treating kids, I was often the very last resort for these children that were sick. So they had been doctor after doctor, specialists and blood tests and vaccinations and all kinds of things. And so they didn't love going to the doctor. And so since we are dealing with needles, it's super important to build that trust and that rapport. On the other side of that, we don't ever want to trick or force a child to do acupuncture, because there is always a small chance that the needle might hurt. And I'm going to talk about some ways that we can really make it super easy and painless for kids. But on the outside chance that if you were to trick them and it did hurt, I can guarantee you they would never come back. And kids remember. They will remember if you hurt them. They'll remember if they did not feel safe in your office, or they felt that you were not a trustworthy person, and they will not want to come back. So this is my number 1 rule. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use distraction. You absolutely can distract them, but you never want to trick them. So the main point here is you want to explain what you're going to do and get the child's agreement before you proceed. Now, I don't mean by saying, like, can I do this? Is this okay? It's more about explaining, like, this is how it works, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what I'd like to do, and let me show you what it looks like. And maybe you show them on mom, or you show them on the table, or you show them on a little, stuffed animal, what it's going to be like. And most kids are open to trying it, as long as you are delivering that in a confident way. And then you can try it out and see how they like it. And we're going to also talk about some non-needle things. But the priority is always building trust over using needles. And that's why I always recommend having additional treatment options, so that if needles are a no-go, you have something else you can do. And that way you never feel stressed about, am I going to be able to treat this child? What happens if I can't do acupuncture? Do I charge them? Do I not charge them? It kind of gets a little bit murky in that area. But when you have non-needle treatments, you can always stimulate the acupuncture points. You can always move the chi and tonify them, sedate whatever needs to be done, the non-needle options are a great alternative. So the next pillar is be flexible. And being flexible means that we are, when it comes to an adult treatment, we're used to having a certain routine and flow. Maybe for me, that my patients come in, I greet them, I do an accugraph, we talk a little bit about what's going on and how they're doing. I might give them a little bit of advice, and then they get on the table and we start the treatment. But for kids, this may look completely different. You might have, like for instance, I have children that travel sometimes to see me, so they might be in the car anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour before they arrive at my office. And so what I do for littles, especially toddlers, they might need to play first before we can get down to business and start the treatment. In fact, yesterday I treated a 2-year-old. He'd been in the car for 30 minutes, and so we always start off the treatment. I get on the floor and we get out the trains and we roll the trains around for about 5-10 minutes. And then I do the treatment, and then we're done. So treatment is going to vary, but the main thing is you don't want to treat kids like adults. Kids are not little adults. You all know this, so I'm speaking to the choir here. But I say that because there are some kids that kind of seem like, oh, I could treat them like an adult. So this is when we get into like up to age 12, 14, and teenagers. In even teenagers, we don't want to treat them exactly like adults, because what I've found is that some teens don't feel comfortable verbalizing that they're not comfortable, say, with a point on their foot, or they're afraid to say something. And as a result, you could end up treating them and then they don't want to come back because they didn't like the treatment, but you didn't know that because you just treated them like an adult. And I know this because being a pediatric specialist, I will have teams come to see me after seeing another acupuncturist where they didn't like the treatment. And in one case, this young woman came in, and I guess the acupuncturist had put 12 needles in her head, and she really didn't like that, but was too afraid to say anything. So, making sure you give them permission to tell you that, I'm not comfortable with this. I always have this little speech that I give every single new pediatric patient, and in that speech I say, if there's anything you're uncomfortable with or you don't want me to do, it's totally okay for you to tell me. And as a result of saying that, it really gives them permission to tell me what they're not okay with. And so they enjoy their treatment a lot more. And so I really recommend that you let go of how you think a pediatric visit should be and go with the child's flow. And that will make your job so much easier. And now I say go with the child's flow, but that does not mean that the child is running the treatment. You are still definitely in charge, and you are going to make sure you get that treatment done. You can be playful, but don't bring excitement to the treatment, because you need to remain in control of the treatment, and you still need to push them and be firm on getting them to try things, but also doing it in a way that's going to resonate and be helpful for the child. So you want to be comfortable treating in a variety of locations and allow time for pause and play. So what that means is that, that could be you treating the child on the mom's lap, or on the floor while playing, or on the treatment table. So on the mom's lap, some children, when they're first meeting you, especially babies, it's a lot more comfortable to treat in mom's lap because they feel safe and secure. And then as they get a little bit older, as they become toddlers, then playing on the floor is really, really helpful. I have several toddlers treating right now, and I find that it's way easier to get them engaged in playing trains or rolling toys around on the floor and treat them, and then take a little pause and then treat them again and take a little pause, than it is to try and force them to sit still on a table, sit here while I do the treatment. So I just think that being flexible is really, really important. And then of course, as kids get older, it gets a lot easier to get them on the treatment table and have them relax and rest there. So that is the basic part of going with the child's flow and being flexible. It's just really important not to fixate on having it be one way. The more flexible you can be, the easier it is, as long as you're getting the treatment done. The next pillar is about use the correct needles. And you can see this little guy, he's got a tiny little pediatric needle. In this picture, I think he was like about 15 months old when that picture was taken. You definitely don't want to use adult needles. Adult needles can be, you know, like you do not want to use a 28 gauge needle on a 15-month-old. I mean, that's just not going to be good for anybody. But the cool thing is we have some really, really tiny, tiny pediatric needles that are virtually painless. So what I recommend is the Siren J15 dark blue and dark green 1/2-inch needles. Those are the ones that I use most frequently with children under the age of 12, and really they can barely feel them. And I will, for parents that are a little bit nervous, I will needle the parent with these needles, and they're like, oh, that's nothing. And so for kids, pretty much every child in my practice eventually tries acupuncture, and oftentimes the ones that were afraid, when they finally get it, it's like anticlimactic, because it wasn't a big deal. Like once they actually had the acupuncture and they realized it didn't hurt, they were like, oh my gosh, what was I so worried about? So when you have the right needles, it makes it so much easier. So the tips that I have for needling kids: first, you want to pinch up the skin between your fingers, as you can see there in the picture. And then I take my other hand, I'm holding the needle between my thumb and my pointer finger, and I take my middle finger, I just rub vigorously, and then I will check for readiness. So this is really important. You really want to pay attention to the body language of your pediatric patients, because if they're not ready for the needles, you don't want to insert them, because if they're tensing up or pulling away from you, it's a sign that they're not ready. And if you needle them at that time, it's most likely going to hurt, because if you're tensing up during the treatment, that's not going to feel good to put a needle in. Sorry about that. And then you also want to check for that readiness, give them a quick look. If they're relaxed and they're ready to go, you're good. And I always ask kids, do you want me to just do it, or do you want me to have you breathe and walk you through what's going on? Because I find most kids fall in one or more of those camps, where they're either like they just want to close their eyes and look away and don't want to know what's happening, or they want to watch what I'm doing and they want me to walk them through it so that they know what's coming. So that's a really good question to ask. And then the other thing you can do is provide distraction. So you can have, like for some kids, I usually have a lot of books in my office, and I have other ways of distraction. I try not to use electronics as a distraction, because I really do want them to be present during their treatment, but sometimes that is distraction and we end up doing that. Another thing while you're needling is you can have them wiggle their toes. So if I'm needling the upper body, I will have them wiggle their toes while I'm inserting the needle, and if I'm needling their lower body, I'll have them wiggle their fingers, or I'll have them do their eyebrows or wiggle their nose, something physical to actually distract them from the sensation of the needle. Because really, it's not so much that the needle hurts, it's the perception that it will hurt, and it's that anticipation that makes them feel like it's going to hurt. If you can take away some of that with distraction, it's a really great way to have that to help them out. All right, so I want to know, what do you guys think? How do you feel about treating kids? I want you to let me know in the chat box, and I'm going to look at some of your comments here. We've got somebody from Brazil. How awesome is that? Hey, Kara, so glad to see you here. Kara and I have been working together on some herbal stuff, so that's been fun. Anne says you can have them pick the color. Oh, that's great. That's great. So you'd be like, would you like the blue or would you like the green? Which color would you like? Oh, kids love that. And yeah, red really pretty. Anne says blue is for the babies, but reds are really pretty. Red, that's a good point. You could tell them, like, oh, would you like a red needle? Ooh, it's really fancy and even better. Excellent, Nikki. I'm glad that these tips are helping you feel more confident in treating kids. It really is. With kids, I find it's all about the nuances. It's like, you know the big things, like you know how to pick the points, and you can look up the herbs and you can do all that, but it's all the little things that make such a big difference in making the pediatric treatment so much easier. Let's see, David says, I use a large stuffed doll to have them needle the doll first. Great, that's fantastic. And I do that too. Like sometimes kids will bring in their toys and will like give the toy treatment or give Barbie or their baby doll a treatment first, and that's always fun. So, okay, great. So let's move forward with pillar number 4. Definitely do have your non-needle options. So I'm going to go over all of the non-needle options, but before I start, there's a really important thing you need to say to parents about your non-needle options, which will take away any objections and will make them feel comfortable with what you're doing. Because occasionally parents will come in and you like, the kid's like, I'm not going to do acupuncture. Like, this is clear. Like the child is like, no way, this is not happening. I'm not treating, I'm not going to do needles. And then you're like, okay, let me get out my needle tools. But sometimes the parents are super insistent. Like they're like, I want him to get acupuncture. He needs to get that acupuncture. You're going to sit there and get your acupuncture. And of course, we know this is terrible when it comes to building trust and rapport with the child, because as you want to remember, the child is your patient, not the parent. And so you're working with the child to deliver the best treatment possible. So you're going to whip out your modern non-needle tools or your traditional non-needle tools, and you're going to tell them that this, I'm using this laser or this microcurrent, or I'm going to use Shonishin or whatever it is, because it has a similar therapeutic effect as acupuncture. And I feel very confident that we're going to get good results using this tool. If you tell them that, they're going to be like, oh, okay. And they might ask you questions like, is it going to take longer, or things like that, to which, it really just depends on the child and what's going on. But if you tell them that this tool has a similar therapeutic effect as acupuncture, I can guarantee it's going to just make all the rest of using your non-needle tools so much simpler, and you'll never have parents that are doubting your treatments, because that's the last thing you want. A parent that's doubting what you're doing is going to work is less likely to bring them back to get the treatment they need to get better. So if you can help feel confident in what you're doing, that's super duper important. So as you can see in this picture, I've got the laser, and laser acupuncture probably has the most research on it. And I highly recommend lasers, and kids love the lights. So lasers are a great tool that you can use that does have evidence-based research behind it. Microcurrent, there's all kinds of microcurrent tools out there. One of my favorites is the Stim Plus, or the Pointer Plus, which is featured here. There's the Pointer Excel, which is a fancier version of this one, and both work really well. For both laser and microcurrent, I will apply it to the point for anywhere from, say, 15 to 30 seconds. It's totally painless. You can turn the microcurrent down to a point where it's completely painless for the child. And they love it. We call this the ducky in my office. My associate, her daughter came in one day, and when I would put the ducky on my finger, and it'd say like, burr, burr, and she's like, oh, it's a duck. And so from that point forward, it was named the ducky, and kids love it. They love it when I put the ducky on their finger. They love the sound. And so that's a fun tool, and they like it. Many kids ask for it. Do we get to use ducky today? I'm like, all I need to do is put like some duck stickers on there or something, and it will be complete. Shonishin, very popular. Many practitioners use Shonishin, where you use the tools to balance the and the meridians. There are specific protocols that you'll follow, different tools that you'll use, whether you're tonifying or sedating. Definitely recommend, if you're interested in Shonishin, and taking a hands-on class to get experience doing it, to get it to the point where ticklish kids or kids with sensory processing disorders are able to do Shonishin, but a favorite among many of my colleagues who treat kids. And then auriculotherapy is another modality that I use oftentimes in addition to anything else I'm doing. It's very popular with both the kids and the parents. I recently treated a boy. He's got all kinds of stuff going on, a congenital disorder. He has small airway disease. Lots going on. He's 2.5 years old and had not slept through the night. And after treatment, and I applied ear seeds for the first time, he slept for 3 nights in a row. I mean, mom came in the next week and was just giddy. She was so happy. And I find that auricular therapy is really, really helpful for anything behavioral, sensory, sleep. It's incredibly helpful. And it's a home care that parents can do. Kids can be empowered to do it. So especially for behavioral issues or trouble focusing or hyperactivity, the kids can really stimulate those points in their ear, and they can treat themselves that way. So I highly, highly, highly recommend auricular therapy for children. It's something I do with just about every child that comes into my clinic. Tuina is my favorite hands-on traditional method for non-needle treatment for children. It's typically used in children under the age of 5. I like it best on babies and toddlers. I will sometimes use it in older children. And what I love about Tuina is it's so easy to master Tuina. It's so easy to teach it to parents. And because you don't need any special tools, parents can go home and do it. They can do it anywhere. They don't like, oh no, I forgot my tool. No, you have your hands, you have your tools with you all the time. You can always do Tuina, you can always do acupressure. And so it's one of my favorite things to teach parents how to do at home. And one of the things I do as it's like both a service to my patients and as sort of a promotional tool is when the pregnant moms I'm treating have their babies, I say, come on in, and I spend a half an hour with them and I teach them the basic Tuina for wellness. And that gives me a chance to really connect with them and tell them about how I can help their baby if they colic, and as they get older, the various problems that pediatric acupuncture can treat. And so it's not only helpful for the parents, but it's also helpful for growing your practice as well. And then moxa is another thing that you can use in children. In young children, I usually do the tiger warmer, and that can be great for any type of cold disease where there's cold in the intestines or there's wind cold. And I love to use it around the belly. I sometimes use it on the neck for treating the lymph nodes if they're like shoddy lymph nodes from like an ear infection or frequent illness. It's a great way to warm up the channels. And then as kids get older and I'm confident that they can sit still, then I will use the regular stick moxa. I just make sure if I'm doing anything around the head, I cover up the hair and everything with a towel. I make sure the child can tell me if they're feeling that the moxa is too warm. And I always, whether I'm using tiger warmer or the regular stick moxa, I'm putting my hand close to where I'm using the moxa and touching to make sure that it's not getting too hot, even though I've instructed them to let me know it does get too hot. So moxa is also great. And then once you're actually seeing kids in the clinic, I really do a mix and match my modalities. So I might, for a child who's new to acupuncture, I might only do a couple of acupuncture points. I might then switch to laser or microcurrent. And I give almost every child walks out with ear seeds. Then sometimes I'll do some Tuina depending on what's going on. So there's really no right or wrong way to mix the modalities. It's really just what you're comfortable with and what you like to do. I just personally, my style is I want things that are quick, efficient, and effective. And so therapies that take a really long time for me to do on the child, I tend to shy away from because I like to have the treatments be quick and easy for the kids. And that gives me maximum time to work with the parents and guide the parents and talk about diet, nutrition, and herbal medicine and other home care things that I might have them be doing in addition to that. And then the fifth pillar is to definitely get some specialized training and some hands-on practice when it comes to working with kids. Because you can learn it on your own. You certainly can go right into your clinic and just start playing with the kids and learning how to do treatment just by practicing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I highly encourage everyone to do that. But what I do know from teaching over the last 6 years is that those who really take a quantum leap in their ability to treat kids and get comfortable really fast are the ones that get specialized hands-on training and learn from someone else that's already done it. And so when it comes to your training, you really want to start with the essentials. And like I said, the first thing is getting that hands-on experience with kids with both acupuncture and non-needle tools. And this picture here, this is of some of the acupuncturists that have come to my office. They've taken my trainings and they got to come and treat kids with me for a day. And so these are some of my patients that they're working on with the Pointer Plus in this picture. And so a couple times a year, I have trainings, I have pediatric rounds where you can actually come, and all we do all day long treat kids, and it is phenomenal. My very first training that really was a catalyst for me feeling comfortable treating kids was when I actually got to treat kids with an expert guiding me and watching what they were doing. I can't believe how much I learned just from seeing someone else do it and going, oh, you can do that, or oh, don't do that. I mean, that just made all the difference. And I'll tell you a little bit more about rounds later on. At the end of this training or this webinar. So another thing you need to know is your red flags and to refer, because I know a lot of acupuncturists have some fear about like liability about treating kids, a fear that maybe, you know, what if I miss something? What if I don't refer them? Like, how do I know? So knowing your red flags and when to refer is really critical, because it will allay a lot of those fears. Really, they'll just dissolve when you know your red flags and you know what you're looking for, and you can say confidently to them, like, okay, if your child's cough persists and they run a fever, if they have trouble breathing, if you see their accessory respiratory muscles, like at the throat or their ribs, are working really hard, you know, I want you to call your doctor and get into them right away. It just will relieve so much of your stress knowing those red flags. And you certainly can just look them up on a case-by-case basis, but it's also helpful to have run through them and sort of memorize them so you feel really confident about when to refer. And the other thing I tell people is that when in doubt, refer out. If you're not sure, just refer. Just refer to the doctor. It's better to err on the side of caution than to not refer and then find out something happened later on, because nobody wants to be in that situation. And then the etiology and pathogenesis of pediatric illness. As we all know, children are different. They have different constitutional weaknesses. Their illnesses will start different, and asthma is a great example. The etiology and pathogenesis of asthma is different from like birth to age 3, and then from 3 and up, and more chronic cases as compared to adults. And so when you know how these starts and what imbalances are there, it's so much easier to figure out your treatment plan, to figure out what herbal medicine that you want to prescribe to them, and so forth. So knowing the pediatric stuff is super important. And then, of course, pediatric herbal medicine. We can't give exactly the same herbs to kids as we do adults. There are some herbs we shouldn't give them at all. There are some herbs that, you know, some ways that we want to tonify and sedate, or, you know, clear heat, or, you know, so forth, that are different, a little bit different herbs, maybe different combinations that you're going to use in children than in adults. So studying pediatric herbal medicine is really important. And then the last piece is special diets. A lot of today in America, the SAD diet, the standard American diet, SAD, it's terrible, and it is a major cause and source of poor health in children. And so we need to be able to properly advise our patients on how to eat beyond the basics of Chinese medicine, because Chinese medicine definitely has some very wise advice. Some of it may not be entirely practical for modern kids, but there are some things that we can do in order to help children eat a better diet and get back on track. And so one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys is that I do online training and mentoring, and my starter course, Pediatric Essentials, covers everything that I just talked about. Because when I created this course, thinking, what do people need to get started to get them feeling confident really, really fast? And that is how Pediatric Essentials was born. And then on top of that, I also mentor acupuncturists, just doing private sessions. And then every year I do a small group coaching program geared for acupuncturists that already have their basic training and they're ready to take it to the next level. Like, they really want to start seeing more kids. And it is amazing what happens when we work together for 10 months. and help them see kids. Because really, there are so many children. There are millions and millions of children who are suffering and need our help. And we really, really need more acupuncturists that feel confident and have the training to successfully treat kids. And for those of you who are interested in getting that hands-on training, I have a few spots left in both my May 18th and September 28th pediatric rounds training that's coming up. And it's going to be phenomenal. It's just so, these are my funnest classes because we just have so much fun. You can see her trees we have a lot of siblings that come in. So it's like fun and chaotic and there's a lot of energy and it's a great time. So I really want to recommend that to anybody who's interested in hands-on training. And then if you just want to treat your own kids, you want to learn more about how to explain Chinese medicine to parents, I recommend my book, Heal Your Child from the Inside Out. And if you purchase it, I offer 3 free bonuses. Jeff is going to share the link to my book. And if you purchase it there, you can get a CEU class on elemental parenting. It's a really great resource for not only for parents, but also for acupuncturists. So this was written for parents, but I feel like it's like a great tool for acupuncturists because it's written for the layperson. So there's a lot of language in there that can help practitioners explain what we do to parents. And there are tons and tons of resources on my website at acupuncturepediatrics.com. I have a blog there. I do regular videos. I do Facebook Lives. So I give you tons and tons of resources there. And that's also where my entire course catalog is located. And you can check it out there. And of course, I want to invite all of you to take my free pediatric training, which you can find at my website on the front page there. It's at acupuncturepediatrics.com. If you just click that blue button there, it'll take you and you'll instantly get access to my free pediatric course. And it's a great way to get started. Lots more tips on treating kids in that course. So, oh my goodness, this has been so much fun, and I've been love watching all the comments come through. I see that Ashley has already ordered her book. Awesome, Ashley. That's cool. I sign all the books when people order it directly from my website. I will sign them all and send them out to you. And I would love to just open it up for your questions to see what you guys need to know, what I can help you with.
All right. Hey, Robin, that was amazing. I can speak for everybody here that this information was fantastic. I know everyone learned. We have a lot of fun questions to get to.
Oh, great.
So let's start. So Chris would like to know, is there any special insight about the diagnostic part of the treatment? Robin, can you hear me? Robin? Hello? Robin? Are we frozen? Okay, so Chris hears me. Robin is frozen. Let's see. Robin, can you refresh? Sorry, just bear with us one moment, please, while we get Robin back up and running here. Let's see. Let's do this. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, bear with me, Jennifer and everybody here. Sorry, guys. Okay, we're going to bring Robin back. Just bear with me. Oh. All right, well, guys, it looks like Robin lost internet connection, so just bear with us a moment while we get her back on and we can get to all of these great questions. If there are any questions that we don't have to get to tonight, Robin will graciously answer them afterwards, and we'll share them along on our blog with the recording. So just give us a moment here. Robin looks like is working on getting herself back in, so please, again, bear with us. Just to let you guys know, we will have another webinar plan for next month in May. We will get that listed on our website and blog shortly, so bear with us. Robin is getting ready to come back on stage, and thank you again for everybody's patience. All right, Robin, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sorry about that. My computer completely froze.
You know, why wouldn't it do it?
All right.
So let's get back into the questions. So Chris had a question about, is there any special insight about the diagnostic treatment?
Yes. So typically, like in young kids, pulse is not going to work, right? On a baby or a kid, you're not going to be taking pulse. Tongue, in some instances, is just not reliable. So you're relying a lot on signs and symptoms. Diagnostically speaking, in the books you'll see about the finger vein. They will talk about the finger vein. I haven't found that very clinically useful personally. So what I actually do for kids, if they'll, as long as they can hold still, I do an acugraph, because that tells me where the energy is in their meridians, and then I can balance that. And that's been super formative for me to help me with diagnosis. But the rest is done on just signs and symptoms.
All right, and then another great question from Wallace. He wants to know how this affects your time management with your skin and other patients, because it seems like it might take, it says when the patients may take longer to get ready.
Right, yes. So I set aside 30 minutes for my pediatric treatments, and my office, I typically run 2 rooms at a time, sometimes 3. So the way that I do it is, really the pediatric treatments take, if they're really young kids, it's only going to take a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes tops. And so that gives me 25 minutes of talking time and play time if we need it to get them started. And then for older children, usually there's not, like, I'm not having to, go with their flow so much. They're pretty much just talking what's going on and getting on the table. So that tends to work out. And then my patients are used to me sometimes having to step out. So sometimes I will talk about what's going on and do the acugraph and whatnot. And then I will say, let's pause here. I need to take care of my other patient. And I go and do that. And then I come back and do the actual treatment on the child. So that's kind of how I manage it.
All right. And then Chris would like to know, do you go for Da Chi when you're needling feet?
It depends. I mean, I'm needling as deep. I'm usually going until, like, I'm not going for tingling or intense needle sensation, but I am going until I feel like the chi has arrived at the needle, which is, with kids, it's usually very quick and very fast that the chi will arrive.
And then Chris also would like to know, which color lasers do you employ?
I use blue and green, red, blue and red. Red is my #1 laser, unless I need to sedate. So I'll use red if I need to tonify, and then I'll use blue if I need to sedate.
All right. And then Anne wanted to know, on the pointer, do you only use microcurrent?
On the pointer? I'm not sure I understand. On,
like, the Pointer Plus, when you're stimming,
yes.
Do you only do microcurrent, or do you use higher levels of stimulation as well?
I generally use very low levels of stimulation on the points, and I find that works just fine. Think about it this way: kids have so much chi, they have so much yang because they're growing and developing. We don't have to work really hard for it. It's right there, and it wants so badly to be in balance. It's just a little bit of stimulation on a point is enough to shift it.
All right, and moving along, and Kim would like to know, do you teach your Tuina techniques to other practitioners? And if so, do you have any pre-recorded webinars out there?
I do. I have a webinar called Tuina Basics, which goes over all the basic techniques, and then I give you the protocols for the different issues. And it's all recorded on video so you can see how to do it. And then just get your own kids or your friends' kids or your nieces and nephews, somebody, and just practice on them. And I guarantee you, like, it's so fast to learn Tuina. And kids will tell you. They will let you know if you're doing it right.
And then Nancy asked, how long do you spend with the child in the appointment?
I spend typically 30 minutes, sometimes less, but I'm very clear with my treatments that it's not a time-based treatment. Like, we don't have to use a full 30 minutes. We might be in the treatment room for some kids that are super cooperative and they know the drill. I mean, sometimes the treatment's 15 minutes long. And I just don't base my pricing on the time, it's just the service. However, if it takes 10 minutes or 30 minutes, it's the same price.
All right. And then Nancy wants to know a little bit more about what an accugraph is and does.
Yes, so the accugraph is based on a Japanese technique called Ryota Raku, where we're measuring electrical resistance at the source points. And then what is really amazing is the program gives you a graph of what is going on. And this is meridian diagnosis. So it's not Zong Fu, not diagnosing, qi deficiency or blood. We're just seeing how the energy is flowing in the meridians. And so the whole idea is where it's just like Chinese medicine, right? Where the qi is blocked, if we restore the flow, then the body heals itself. And so this is a very direct way to objectively measure the qi in the meridians, which is great for kids because they can't always tell you, like, it hurts here or it feels like this. They can't usually describe things. So the graph will give me information about how the qi is flowing in their body. I can use either needles or laser or any of the techniques to balance it, and then we can treat the symptoms. And I just find it's incredibly helpful. And it's so great. Like I had a child I was treating for asthma, and it took me like 6 months to get them to change their diet. And we had been doing the graphs, and I was like, look, the graph is not changing because I really think he's just eating too much sugar, too many carbs. So we got him on this really great diet. It was a bit of a struggle in the beginning, but the first full week on the new diet, the graph went completely balanced. And the parents were like, oh my gosh, like they were full on into the diet after that. So it's also great to educate and show the results of what you're doing.
All right. And then Christiane would like to know, do you ever treat kids with light cupping techniques?
Yes, I was thinking about that actually. Glad she asked because I do, and I recently purchased the glass cups. A friend of mine gave me one of the facial cupping glass cups, with the bulb on it, and I was trying that out, and oh my gosh, the kids love that cup. I mean, you can use any cups. You can use glass, like fire cups, but you got to be careful not to get it too tight on them. But I love back shu cupping for kids, especially because I treat so many respiratory conditions, so much frequent illness, and the back shu cupping is fabulous. And these little squeeze bulb cups are phenomenal because they're tiny. They're meant for facial cupping, so they're really tiny and they're perfect for little backs. So definitely love cupping. So thank you for asking the question. That's great.
And I just put a link to the cupping set that you're referring to in the chats and in the question tab as well. And then Worrell would like to know, how long do you leave the ear seeds on?
I typically have parents leave them on for 3 to 4 days, and they will survive swim lessons and showers and baths and all of that. But what happens is parents like them so much, I have to tell them, please take them off after 4 to 5 days because they will leave little red spots. The skin will get irritated. They really do need to take it off after 4 to 5 days. So just make sure you're clear about instructions before they leave your clinic.
And then Mandy wants to know, is your needle retention time for older children?
Totally dependent on the child. So for instance, yesterday I treated an 11-year-old who rested with the needles 30 minutes. That's really unusual. Most 11-year-olds are only going to retain needles for 10, possibly 15 minutes, and they're antsy during that time. So you kind of have to judge based on the child. Like sometimes I find girls tend to be a little more relaxed and can retain needles a little bit longer than boys generally, but not always. And as they get older, once they're over 12 or 13, typically they can rest for 15 to 20 minutes with the needles.
All right, just a couple more questions left. Looks like the one is from Kim. How many ear seeds do you apply at one time? And would it be less than you would do on an adult?
Typically 2 to 4 on each ear. It kind of depends on the child. If they have a lot going on, there's typically more. And if it's behavioral, I typically do more. So if it's behavioral, there's 4 seeds usually on each ear.
And our very last question of the night would be from Crystal. And what about diabetic children? Can you treat them, and does it affect their blood sugar?
Gosh, you know what? I've actually, in all my experience, I've never had a child come in specifically for diabetes. So I don't know. I mean, if I always assume that if we can get results in an adult and we can do a similar thing for a child, that the chances are that we would be able to get good results.
All right, well, that's our last question. So, I mean, we just want to thank you, Robin. You're extremely informative webinar. We are going to share the recording in the next few weeks, and you'll be able to find that on our blog, which is blog.lassaoms.com. We would normally make sure any unanswered questions get answered, but they were all answered today. And then we'll announce our next webinar coming soon. Please go back into the chat tab, and you can see all of the links to Robin's book, Robin's free trainings. You'll also receive an email with all of this information immediately following. And I hope everyone has a great night, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. It was great being here.
Thank you, Robin. Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.